Today we're unpacking what really feels like the definitive end of an era.
I'm your resident expert for this deep dive, and yeah, it absolutely is.
So if you've looked at the news recently, you probably know the hook here. August 2nd, 2024.
Right.
That is the exact date the music officially stopped.
Completely stopped. No massive farewell concert at Fenway Park. No global televised goodbye.
No final confetti drop?
Exactly. Just a press release stating that Aerosmith has retired from touring, effective immediately.
Which was a shock to a lot of people.
It was. But when you really look at the medical reality of the situation, it was inevitable. I mean, this wasn't a we're just tired kind of retirement.
But it wasn't about fatigue.
No, this was the machinery has catastrophically failed retirement.
And we aren't talking about, a sore throat or a vocal node.
Not at all.
We are talking about a fractured larynx. Steven Tyler didn't just lose his voice, he literally broke his voice box.
That is the brutal reality we need to start with today, because this injury actually happened back in September 2023.
Right at the start of the tour.
Yeah, just 3 shows into their Peace Out Farewell tour. Tyler sustained vocal cord damage that was so severe it led to internal bleeding.
Which is horrifying.
It is.
Yeah.
And the fracture itself implies a level of physical trauma that is almost hard to comprehend in the context of just singing.
It sounds like a sports injury, like something a linebacker gets, not a rock singer.
Oh, well, you have to think about how Steven Tyler sings.
That's true.
He doesn't croon. He screams, he scats, he howls. He pushes air out with incredible force. For 50 years, he has essentially been redlining that engine.
Pushing it to the absolute limit.
Exactly. And in September, the cartilage just finally gave way. And despite having the best medical care in the world over the last year, the doctors concluded that a full recovery...
Meaning that specific high-altitude range of his.
Right, getting that back is physically impossible.
So the engine blew.
The engine blew.
But for you listening today, our mission isn't to just write an obituary for the band. We are here to really look at what I call the cockroach theory of rock and roll.
I love that term.
Because, honestly, the most surprising thing about Aerosmith isn't that they retired in 2024. It's that they didn't completely implode in 1979.
Or 1986.
Or 2009.
Exactly. That's really the core of this deep dive. If you look at the mountain of biographies and articles we've pulled from, you realize Aerosmith is the ultimate case study in survival.
It's a 50-year business saga.
It is, and it's defined by 3 very distinct eras. You have the 70s rise and toxic fall, the 80s corporate resurrection, and then the modern era.
That modern era being the sort of unhappy marriage phase that kept the corporate rock giant moving forward.
Right. And to understand that specific chemistry, we really have to go back to the very beginning.
Summer of 1969, soon-to-be New Hampshire.
Which is not exactly the rock and roll capital of the world.
Definitely not. But it's where Steven Tyler, who, by the way, is already acting like a massive rock star, despite having 0 fame.
Yeah. Total confidence.
Total confidence. He walks into a local club called The Barn, and he sees a band playing.
A local group called the Jam Band.
Right. Featuring Joe Perry on guitar and Tom Hamilton on bass. Now, according to the lore in all the sources, Tyler actually wasn't impressed by the band itself.
He wasn't. He thought they were generally terrible, sloppy, untuned, but, and this is the key insight into Tyler's musical brain, he heard the groove.
Because they were playing a cover.
Right. Yeah, they were covering Fleetwood Mac's Rattlesnake Shake, and there was just something in the way Joe Perry leaned into the rhythm that Tyler connected with on a visceral level.
He saw the vision.
He saw the potential for a partnership that could rival those massive British blues rock giants.
Like the Stones or Zeppelin.
Exactly.
So he essentially poaches them. He decides right there in the barn, I'm going to form a band with these guys.
And that dynamic is fascinating because socially, they were worlds apart.
Complete opposites.
Tyler was this loud, brash kid from New York, the son of a classical musician.
And
Perry was a local kid working in a diner, cleaning up after tourists. He actually admitted later that he hated Tyler before they formally met.
Because Tyler would come into the diner.
Yeah, Tyler was obnoxious, throwing food, acting like he owned the place. It's basically the classic enemies to lovers trope, but for rock stars.
I love that. So they formed the band and moved to Boston, 1325 Commonwealth Avenue.
The legendary Aerosmith apartment.
And this is where the ambition really crystallizes. Because Tyler has that famous quote about what they wanted to be.
We didn't just want to be a good band, we wanted to be the biggest band on the planet.
The biggest band on the planet. But to get there, They were living on the absolute fringe of society.
And this is a detail that often gets glossed over in the glossy rock documentaries. Their social circle in Boston wasn't other musicians or college kids.
No, it was criminals.
Joe Perry was incredibly blunt about this in his memoir. He said, and I quote, "Our best friends were drug dealers."
Which begs the question, was that just about access to the drugs?
I mean, that was certainly a perk. But Perry explains it goes a lot deeper than that. He said they felt like outcasts.
Right.
They looked like freaks with the long hair and the clothes. They felt like actual menaces to polite society. So they naturally identified with the outlaw.
That us against the world mentality.
Exactly. It was baked into their DNA long before they ever sold a single record.
And speaking of selling records, that was a real struggle initially. They eventually get signed by Clive Davis to Columbia Records.
After he saw them at Max's Kansas City in New York.
Right. And they get this huge signing bonus, $125,000.
Which was massive money back then.
Life-changing money. But then their debut album lands with a total thud.
Complete silence from the public.
I mean, we think of Dream On as this undeniable classic today.
Which Tyler famously wrote in a living room on a warped guitar.
Right. But in 1973, radio stations wouldn't touch it.
They didn't know where to place it. It was too hard for pop radio, but too complex for the standard rock stations.
So they had to build their following purely through live friction. Relentless touring.
And this is where the Blue Army comes in.
Their incredible fan base.
Yes. Since radio ignored them, they toured high schools, local colleges, armories. They played for the kids in denim jackets.
The blue-collar youth?
The ones who felt ignored by the rock critics. Aerosmith became the people's band long before the critical establishment gave them the time of day.
That grassroots support is what carried them to the success of albums like Toys in the Attic and Rocks.
And by the mid-70s, they actually achieved their goal. They were the biggest band in America, filling massive stadiums.
But of course, this brings us to the second stage of our deep dive, the first great collapse. We have to talk about the Toxic Twins.
It really wasn't just a cool marketing nickname. By the late 70s, Tyler and Perry were consuming substances on an industrial scale.
It's hard to even fathom the amounts.
Perry admitted later that they had become drug addicts dabbling in music rather than musicians dabbling in drugs.
That distinction is haunting, because you can actually hear it in the records. The later 70s stuff just gets sloppy.
The focus was entirely gone, and the personal resentment between everyone in the band was skyrocketing.
And it all finally came to a head in Cleveland in 1979.
I really think this is the most Spinal Tap moment in their entire history.
Absolutely. Because they didn't break up over songwriting royalties.
No.
They didn't break up over creative differences. They broke up over milk.
Spilt milk. Literally.
Tell us about the milk fight.
So backstage in Cleveland, tensions are already high. The band members' wives are arguing, and one wife throws a glass of milk at another wife.
Unbelievable.
A massive screaming brawl breaks out. The band members rush in, taking sides, defending their wives, and in the heat of that completely ridiculous, petty moment, Joe Perry quits the band.
It seems so petty, but the milk was really just the detonator, right? The bomb had been ticking for years.
Precisely. The core trust was completely gone. And then Brad Whitford, their rhythm guitarist, he leaves shortly after in 1981.
Which plunges Aerosmith straight into what fans call the Dark Ages.
The Dark Ages. Tyler kept the name Aerosmith and hired replacement guitarists Jimmy Crespo and Rick Dufay.
But it was basically a cover band at that point.
It was pathetic, honestly. Albums like Rock in a Hard Place just completely flopped. Tyler was actively collapsing on stage, forgetting lyrics.
And where was Joe Perry during all this?
Perry was broke. He was sleeping on friends' couches. His solo project was failing miserably.
Which perfectly sets the stage for the 1984 reunion. And this is a part of the business story I think people really misunderstand.
They assume the band reunited because they missed each other.
Exactly. Like they had some spiritual awakening.
Not even close. They reunited because they were destitute. It was a cold, hard financial transaction.
Tyler has a quote about this that is just chilling.
Joe is nothing without me, and I'm nothing without him.
That is not a statement of brotherly love. That is a statement of pure codependency.
They needed the brand name Aerosmith to survive.
But here is the critical detail. They reunited for the Back in the Saddle tour in '84, but they did not get clean.
Not at all. The tour was a mess. They were still actively using. Tyler later described it as using in spite of adverse consequences.
The album they put out, Done with Mirrors, it flopped. By 1985, they were viewed by the industry as absolute dinosaurs.
Because the hair metal bands were taking over.
Yeah.
Motley Crue, Van Halen, they were eating Aerosmith's lunch.
They needed a miracle.
And they got one from the most unlikely source imaginable. They didn't get saved by writing a new rock ballad.
No, they got saved by a rap group from Queens.
Run DMC.
Walk This Way. The 1986 collaboration.
The track that changed absolutely everything.
Right.
But we really have to debunk the myth that this was some happy, unified artistic vision.
Right. Because neither side actually wanted to do it.
Run DMC actively hated the song. Jam Master Jay called the original lyrics hillbilly gibberish.
They wanted nothing to do with these washed-up rock guys.
And Tyler and Perry were just as stubborn. Rick Rubin, the producer who put this together, basically had to bribe them.
He offered them $8,000 just to show up.
Just to come to the studio for one single day. And because they needed the money, they took the cash.
But Rick Rubin was the real visionary here. He saw what this could be. He saw the Trojan horse.
He did. You have to remember, if you were watching MTV in 1986, it was largely segregated.
Rap was not getting heavy rotation.
At all. And rock radio certainly wasn't playing rap. But by combining the two and visually breaking down that literal wall between the bands in the music video,
Rubin created a massive cultural event.
It put Run DMC in living rooms across white suburban America. But more importantly for our story today, it made Aerosmith cool again.
It introduced them to a whole new generation of teenagers who previously thought they were ancient history.
It was the spark they needed. But behind the scenes, the band was still a complete chemical disaster zone.
Which leads to their manager, Tim Collins, stepping in. He realized that if he didn't do something drastic, the biggest band on the planet was going to be dead within a year.
So he sets a trap. It's 1986. He tells Steven Tyler, "Steven, get to the office at 6 a.m. The BBC is calling in for a major radio interview."
And Tyler, who always loved the spotlight, shows up bright and early.
Only to walk in and find there is no BBC.
It's just the band, the manager, and a doctor.
A brutal, old-school intervention. They confronted him on his drug use.
Which Tyler was furious about, Ron.
Oh, he was loudly pointing out the hypocrisy. Because, as he noted, basically everyone else in that room was high while they were intervening on him.
He felt completely ambushed by his own drinking buddies.
He was resentful, but he went to rehab. He went kicking and screaming, but he went. And eventually, the rest of the band followed suit.
Which officially launches the third stage of Aerosmith. The Sober Superstars.
The era of permanent vacation? Pump, get a grip.
This is when the corporate machine really turned on. They stopped being just a gritty rock band and became a polished global brand.
They brought in outside pop songwriters to guarantee hits.
They had Alicia Silverstone starring in huge MTV videos.
They even got their own roller coaster at Disney World, the Rock and Roller Coaster.
It was total corporate makeover. They traded the danger for consistency.
And for 20 years, it worked flawlessly. They made millions of dollars, but...
You can't erase 40 years of history.
Exactly. The sobriety stuck for a long time, but the personality clashes never actually went away. They just went underground.
Which brings us to the crisis of 2009. And for you listening, this is the period I find most fascinating because the public facade they had built completely cracked.
It shattered. After years of sobriety, Steven Tyler relapsed.
On prescription pills.
Yeah, mostly due to legitimate pain management for all his orthopedic injuries from performing. And it culminated with him falling off a stage during a show in South Dakota.
He broke his shoulder, and they had to cancel the rest of the tour.
And instead of rallying around him, the band essentially excommunicated him.
It got incredibly nasty. Tyler ghosted everyone. He stopped answering calls and told management he wanted to take a 2-year hiatus to work on what he called Brand Tyler.
He wanted to write an autobiography and do solo work. And Joe Perry was furious. He went straight to the press and literally said, "Steven quit, as far as I can tell."
But the ultimate betrayal, the thing that really almost ended the band forever, was the secret audition.
The Led Zeppelin rumor.
It sounds like an internet urban legend, but it's completely real.
In 2008, Jimmy Page and John Paul Jones were looking to tour, but Robert Plant said no, so they held secret auditions for a new singer.
And Steven Tyler went. Can you imagine the ego required to think, I can just step in and replace Robert Plant?
Well, apparently the execution didn't quite match the ego. Jimmy Page later called the audition awkward.
Ouch.
Reports from the room say Tyler was unprepared, he didn't know the words to the songs, and it was basically a disaster.
But when Joe Perry found out his musical soulmate was secretly trying to jump ship to the competition,
That cut incredibly deep. It added a layer of mistrust that was hard to shake. Perry actually started auditioning singers to replace Tyler in Aerosmith.
which is insane to think about. Who did they look at?
They approached Billy Idol, Chris Cornell, Paul Rogers.
Wow. Aerosmith without Steven Tyler. It's like the Rolling Stones without Mick Jagger.
It would have been a disaster. And I think cooler heads, and probably their lawyers, eventually prevailed. They realized the bad marriage was the only financially viable way forward.
We stay together for the kids, right?
Right. And the kids are the songs. They accepted that they might hate each other in the dressing room,
They might travel in separate buses.
stay in separate hotels, but for those 2 hours on stage every night, the chemistry was still undeniable.
That underlying friction is actually what made the live shows work.
Exactly. So they patch it up with duct tape and glue. They reunite for a massive tour in 2010. They do the huge Las Vegas residency later on. They proved they could still deliver the goods.
But then comes May 2023. The band announces the Peace Out Tour, the final lap around the world.
And even at that announcement, the cracks were showing again. Joey Kramer, their original drummer, wasn't invited to participate.
The press release cited focusing on family and health.
But it was clear that the original five brotherhood had finally succumbed to age and physical ability.
So they start the tour in September 2023. They managed to play exactly 3 shows.
And then the injury we talked about at the very beginning happens, the fractured larynx.
And this is where the survival story finally meets its biological limit.
You can go to rehab for heroin, you can sue your manager and win, you can survive failing albums and changing trends.
But you cannot negotiate with torn cartilage.
Tyler spent almost a full year trying to fix it. From late 2023 all the way to August 2024, he was working with the best vocal specialists on earth.
But the voice, that very specific soaring instrument that defines the Aerosmith sound, it was just gone.
The band had to face the hard reality. Without Steven's voice, there is no Aerosmith.
So on August 2nd, they pull the plug. It's over.
It's a very quiet end to a very loud career, but when you zoom out and look at the whole picture, you really have to marvel at the longevity.
That brings me to the big takeaway here for everyone listening.
Yeah.
Because when I look at this entire story, from the barn to the final press release, I don't see a tragedy. I see a miracle.
Absolutely. The cockroach theory holds up. They outlived the punk movement,
They outlived the new wave movement.
the grunge movement, the boy band era. They adapted whenever they needed to. They embraced hip-hop, they embraced power ballads, they embraced sobriety.
Joey Perry once called the band a family by choice. And I think that's the most poignant part of all the sources we looked at.
How so?
Well, you can't choose your blood relatives, so you're stuck with them. But these guys, they had a million reasons to walk away from each other.
They had enough money to walk away.
They had enough hate to walk away. They had other opportunities. But they actively chose to stay stuck together.
Because they realized that the sum was always greater than the parts. Individually, they were talented musicians, but together, as those five guys, they were a force of nature.
And they rode that force until the wheels literally fell off.
And the engine blew up.
They didn't burn out. They just wore out.
Completely wore out physically.
So as we wrap up, here is a final provocative thought for you to chew on. We've been talking entirely about the physical end of the band. The larynx is broken, the man can't sing anymore.
Right.
But Aerosmith currently has a ride at Disney World. They have digital avatars in video games. We live in an era where ABBA is currently touring as incredibly successful holograms.
And AI can replicate vocals from 1974 perfectly.
Exactly. So is it really over?
That is a fascinating question.
Does a band in the 21st century actually need to physically exist to keep touring? Or have they built a corporate brand so incredibly strong that Aerosmith could be playing a residency in Vegas in 2050 without a single original member even in the building?
That is both a terrifying and deeply fascinating possibility.
Something for you to explore on your own. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the Toxic Twins and their unbelievable 50-year survival run.
Always a pleasure to break it down.
See you next time.